Hello, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Glad to have you join this morning on Wisdom Seeker Live. Hope that you will let us know where you're joining from. It's always of interest to see where everyone is joining from, and also be sure and type in questions, comments as we go along. Love to dialogue with you. And today we're going to be talking work from home. It is a big topic right now, and a lot of discussion. And we need to begin to think about the implications of working from home. And co-wrote an article recently with Tisha Nyhorster. It was probably about 6 months ago that we wrote this article and on work from home and the implications of it. And so between that and doing a recent poll on LinkedIn about it, I decided, wow, this is something that we probably need to discuss. And I certainly know that I need to gain some wisdom in it. So that's the inspiration for our topic today. Welcome, Manmeet and Scott and Melanie and Anna. Welcome to all of you, and appreciate you joining today. And look forward to hearing from you. Sam, good to always hear from you, my friend. And so let me just remind everyone that the way we look at wisdom in terms of understanding the what wisdom is. So wisdom for our purposes is a process, a journey, and it starts with knowledge, which is something that is very prevalent here out in the our current society. If nothing else, if you need to know something, you can either ask Siri or Google and find a lot of different answers. Good morning, Roger. Glad to have you with us. And so knowledge is our first step in the journey to wisdom. It is helpful, but not the end all, or as some would suggest, that knowledge is power. Knowledge is just the beginning. And so I just encourage everyone not to stop there. The next step in the journey in seeking wisdom is to area of understanding, which is primarily based in experience and what we do and learn from taking our knowledge and doing something with it, whether it's in work or life. And in fact, one of the things that I'm going to do is just say in life, because work is just a part of life. And so hope we can keep that in mind. And welcome, Ahmed. Glad to have you. And so the second step is understanding or experience, which is application of knowledge. And then the last step in the process is in gaining wisdom. And the thing that differentiates wisdom from the other is that it is beginning to see knowledge and understanding from a much bigger, broader perspective. And for those of us that are spiritually minded, spiritually based, it is the way I like to communicate it is seeing our world and making choices by seeing through God's eyes, our Heavenly Father's eyes, because then we begin to understand that what we do, we say, all factors in to not just us, but to those around us and even the larger world. And so, yeah, that's the wisdom journey as we see it on Wisdom Seeker Live. And so thanks, Ahmed, for letting us know you're joining from Dubai. And yes, Scott, Mary Stewart is definitely a wise lady and has lots of good things to offer. and appreciate Mary all the time, having worked with Mary a great deal. So, work from home is an interesting concept, and it's been around obviously a long time, especially for solopreneurs and for people that some have certain jobs. But now it's been thrust to the forefront with everything going on with COVID, and it's causing the conversation to really heat up. Good morning, Zaid. Glad to have you. Glad you could join us. So the whole concept of work from home is not new, but work from home in a large scale is a new concept because traditional work model for most of us, excuse me, is to go to an office somewhere. That is your traditional model, or go to a business location if you're in retail, or go to a hospital or medical facility if you're in that area. So it usually means not working from home. Good morning, Rosemary. Glad to have you from Australia. And so anyway, that's what's been real interesting about the whole concept of work from home, is that it potentially means a major shift. And one of the things that kind of surprised me is that when I took the poll on LinkedIn and I was asking the question about work from home, and the idea was, and I'm working on bringing it up. I'm not ignoring you all. And by the way, just a little housekeeping note. When we are live, sometimes I know it looks like that I am moving or distracted because I'm looking around. I just want you to know, I promise I'm not distracted. I'm actually operating 3 screens to be able to effectively do the show. So anyway, I did a poll and I asked the question about people's thoughts on work from home. And I was a bit surprised at the response. And the short version is that the responses indicated that quite a number of people, as of those that responded, I know it's a non-scientific survey, but a lot of the folks that responded seemed to be of the opinion that the whole concept of work from home, it was pretty simple, not a lot to the consideration. And so I asked this in this poll, referred people to the article that Tisha and I had co-written, and asked people, had we overthought the whole concept and the implications of it? And my sense was that the respondents felt like maybe it was a bit overthought. And so what I wanted to do is get your insights, and let's see if we can gain some wisdom on it. The challenge is not whether we work from home, but whether it becomes a significant movement of people, a shift in behaviors. And I think that's the part that I was trying to get to. And I suppose the poll might have been such that it wasn't completely clear about that, but I did reference the article. So, and I'm working in the background trying to bring that up. One of the things I do hope you will do is in the comments, please be sure as we go along, I want you to share your thoughts and comments about it, and so that we can discuss it further. All right, I finally got it brought up, and I'll show you the actual survey, because I can describe things all day long, but for those of us that are visual learners, we will do much better to have visual presentation. So my question is, do you think our article is overthinking the issue, and it is really a pretty simple the issue, and is it really a pretty simple issue? And you'll see that out of the respondents, some said, well, it doesn't affect me, so no problem. It's not my problem, 7%. And then you had 16% says it doesn't matter what the implications are, just let me work from home. So 73% of the respondents on this were of the opinion there was not much to it. And hello, Mazor. Glad to have you with us. And so my question is, how much of an implication is there if we have a major shift from being working outside the home to working from home, or as some refer to it, remotely? So what I'm going to do is share a little bit of some of the things that Tisha and I came up with that are likely factors that need to be considered as we go through this process. And so I'm going to share the screen again. Being a visual learner, I like to have visuals to look at. Let's see here. Let me make that a little bit larger. Okay. So one of the things that we talked about had to do with productivity. And I know this one is a really big deal among the companies and the managers involved in the whole HR aspects of working from home. I know personally of a number of people, managers and the like, that say that when people work from home, they are less productive, which is fascinating to me. I know that for me personally, that working from home typically is a lot more productive, because when I'm in an office and things are going on in the office, people asking questions, walking by wherever you're working, and so on, that distracts me. Now, maybe that's just me because I am more easily distractible, but I just wonder if productivity is something that we really need to nail down. I know a lot of people say that they're like me and that they are more productive at home, but you talk to a lot of traditional managers and they will say to you that production is not as great at home. So as we go along and throw these out, I'd love to hear from you. Okay, welcome, Todd. Let's see, I'm real interested. Todd's got a comment here and would want to see what Todd has to say. Todd says, we've had a strategic approach to work from home for our entire 10 years, so we had much of it in place before the lockdown. We thought of ways to help employees maintain a sense of community, and I think many employers and transportation planners have assumed a larger work from home shift would not be desirable or would never be scalable enough to succeed with large scale implications on issues such as traffic pollution, sustainable profitability. I'd love to talk further about your ideas. Yeah, Todd, I'm right there with you. Now, glad to hear that you are have been proactive in your company to address it, because there are a number of implications to it. And let's see, Rosemary's got a comment. Great. Glad to hear from you guys on this rather than me just talking. So in Australia, the workers' compensation system requires a home-based office to be fit for purpose and have an occupational therapist certify the safety of the office. Okay, that is an implication I hadn't considered myself. Slips, trips, sprains are known injuries from offices. However, if a person has a workplace injury and the home office has not met the required standard, it is possible that an injury claim will be rejected. And I realized that in the workplace. Wow. Yeah, that's another one, because the implication of protection when we're working in an office versus what would happen at home. Wow, another one. Yeah. And Sam has a comment, says managers still under the influence of an archaic business model. Hire the right responsible employee and provide them flexibility, and they will perform, perhaps outperform. Yeah, definitely factors in all that. As I look at the article, of course, we talked about productivity, which means that we're going to have a shift from the standard measure of productivity to consider others, without a doubt. And for me, that means a shift from a manager-only environment to a model of managing things and lead people. And I'll try not to get on my soapbox on that one, but that needs to happen anyway. And work from home is just going to force that issue a bit. And so what we get into is the area of our skill sets that become an issue, and emotional intelligence and those pieces as part of it. And the challenge is that we have a lot of implications, and not all of them are positive. And so we talked about the consideration that there might be some negatives. And what about, one question people don't think about, especially the employee side of things, is, okay, let's say we go to a primarily work from home model. What happens to all the office space? Good morning or good day, Maker. Glad to have you with us. Morning in your location also. So one of the implications of all of this is, from an economy standpoint, if this shift occurs to the degrees that we think, the potential is that this could have widespread economic implications. We could end up with lots of large office buildings sitting empty. So we then ask the question, what do we do with those? Can we convert it? Does it become residential space? Do we demolish them? So a lot of implications to that whole question. Sam has a comment, and yeah, this is in terms of the productivity. Sorry about that. Let's see, I get the right one up. There are now apps, services available to employers to monitor work from home behaviors. By all means, even login systems that can tell that we have to volunteer where our location or whatever. There are a number of ways from a standpoint of accountability that can be done, certainly. So anyway, we're looking at the economy and the economic impact of whether we keep lots of office space. I found this graphic pretty intriguing. Don't know that I've ever worked in an office quite like that, but it looks interesting. And then so the implications of not having to maintain big offices, but there is a other side of that discussion or equation is, if we have to set up an office at home, for many people there's going to be a cost there. It may be increased internet speed, it may be a different computer, a lot of different implications there. So the question becomes, who pays for that? Is that going to be something that the employee just takes on and pays for, or would the expectation be that a company would pay the expense of whatever it took to set up a home office? And if the company is not promoting the idea of work from home then takes out the responsibility, if you will, of them for them, because they are offering a place to work that is already set up. So again, just another implication and something to be considered. And so let's see. Rosemary has another comment. Says, Sam, legislation takes priority over apps. All changes need to work within the existing legislation. Oh yeah, there is the current laws and things. And Sam comments that it requires a new paradigm that must consider things holistically and individually. It's a learning curve. Sam, so true. You know, part of the challenge with this is that it is a big learning curve. Again, not the concept of work from home, but the implications of a major shift in our work behaviors to where we are working from home. That's where the real implication comes in. And another one that, as Tisha and I were researching this one, for me, one of the big values of not going to an office is certainly a commute. And one of the things, though, that I hadn't considered, you know, for me, not commuting is a big savings, both in time and cost of transportation. But there are others, such as the effect on pollution in cities especially, and the consideration there. And then there is a stress component. I don't know about you guys, but when I get caught up in Atlanta traffic, my stress level, let's just say it's not where it should be, because our commutes can be very stressful and tough. And then as we dug into this further, it was some more implications in regards to commute, such as road maintenance and all of that, which sounds like a good problem, if you will. But just remember, people's jobs and current economies are based on the idea that we are needing to do a certain amount of road maintenance and have a certain amount of traffic control system. If this work from home concept goes large scale, it could change all that. It could be very positive, but there could be negative implications, even potentially put people out of work. Let's see, Sam's got a great comment. Let's see, from a green perspective, there are those that may focus on that as a benefit. Of course, downsizing brick and mortar and reducing pollution. Yep, that is definitely a factor. And then Rosemary, the other conversation is happening in small parts here in Australia. It is that if work can be done 100% outside the office, then there's nothing to prevent employers from employing people from third world countries on a much lower wage and without any employee benefits. Wow, yeah. Hadn't considered that one, Rosemary. That's another good one. If you don't have to be in an office to do it, can it be outsourced to other parts of the world where the cost of living is lower and the standard of living is lower, and so the wages are lower? So yeah, another implication. Zaid comments, I prefer the trust system over monitoring. Let productivity and collaboration among the team members be the referee. Yeah, that's another way of considering the accountability piece. And part of the challenge with accountability is, I think Sam commented about the old system of management, which is very much at play here. That alone is needing to shift, and so working from home will force some of that, because everything is not about KPIs. There are a lot more components to what is enters in productivity, and it doesn't all come in check boxes. So the lot of implications there, and so we think about. I have to share this one because this is what it looks like here in Atlanta. For those of you who've never been here, we have an area of our part of town called Spaghetti Junction with lots of flyovers, and this is kind of what it looks like. And so the whole commuting picture becomes a question. And then another one that, again, we may not consider is, what about health, okay, for us as employees? Everybody says, well, that, I'll be less stressed, so everything will be wonderful. Well, okay, but if you're working from home, does it going to cause you to be more sedentary, and therefore your physical exercise level has reduced? It doesn't have to mean that, certainly, because we can choose to get up and move around. The question becomes, as a culture, are we prepared for that? And then the other aspect, and this becomes another factor, is the human interaction and emotional issues or opportunities that come into play in our offices. There are going to be some people that are going to be perfectly content working from home because they are introverted, very comfortable with that, and they need less people interaction to be healthy emotionally and mentally. But then there are those that are more extroverted, and part of the value of being in an office with coworkers is the social interaction, the opportunity to share and speak and be able to have that physical presence connectivity. Sam offers that's something telling that Facebook employees are expecting to slowly return to the office over time, perhaps within a more hybrid approach. Yeah, I have to admit, Sam, that does seem a little bit funny for a social media platform to even make it an issue of going back to the office, because obviously social media is driven remotely, virtually. And so, yeah, that is kind of interesting. Sam has shared the article in the comments for those of you looking. And but the implications related to our health, it becomes a challenge. And so as you look through this article and all, it indicates, and then with our discussion, wow, the many implications of it are pretty widespread. Do you guys see a shift, from primarily reporting to an office to a primarily work from home model? Do you see that as on the whole a good thing, or on the whole a bad thing, or just something that we just need to say, yeah, we're going to do it and go for it? What are your thoughts there? Is this, am I overthinking this concept, or is there a lot more to it that we really need to consider, and as is part of our show, that we need to be seeking wisdom on? Because excuse me, dry throat this morning. Part of wisdom is being able to see things from a larger perspective, not just how it affects me, but how it affects others around me, and consider those implications. One of my concerns, and this is something that was also a factor in this, my wanting to bring this topic forward, is my good friend on LinkedIn, William Harrison, had started a conversation in regards to the whole concept of work from home and those pieces. And I have a growing concern that that we're going to have a workforce crisis potentially coming up, and that how we address the work from home issue is going to become a determining factor whether it goes, this workforce crisis happens full force, or if it continues to be something a little more in the background. For those that aren't aware, I do a lot of workforce study and research because it's something of interest, something I speak to companies and all. And in my research, I see some real challenges in workforce that are already in play. And there are two in particular that are major. And then there is, this one would become the third one. The two that are already a factor and affecting our current workforce is the education system. And we've had quite a lot of dialogue on this one, and how it has, the implications of how it has affected workforce and challenges that it has created, causing us to, frankly, I'm concerned that we're going to lack sufficient workforce to be able to meet the workforce demands. And then the second component is to do with the whole concept of management in the workforce, because currently we continue, as Sam mentioned, have a situation where we are operating many companies and organizations under an old management model that's been around a long time, but it's based on the concept of managing things and people. And to when I mention managing things and people, I'm referring to, as far as people goes, managing people by checkboxes. Their whole evaluation is based on KPIs and checkbox type items. And it's also based in a model of accountability through authority. So there are two issues that we're already challenged in the workforce. And then my question becomes, if this work from home shift occurs, is it going to be, the words that came to my mind is the perfect storm to really have create some major issues in the workforce in the whole. And so just something that I've been thinking about, considering. So comments from Sam. On the whole, a good thing. No, not overthinking. It's a very relevant, important consideration, because as your article elaborated, the implications are broad. Thanks, Sam. I appreciate that. There are moments when I was looking at the survey and everything, I thought, well, maybe I am just missing something here, or I am trying to make something out of something that's not there. So let's see. Zaid, I would say it all depends on the outcome. If companies started to shift jobs overseas, then here we have a negative issue. If we manage to provide jobs, increase the green impact, the impact then is positive, and so on. Sometimes companies hold on hiring because they don't have space in their current office for more people. So yeah, it's going to be hard to say, and Zaid, by your comments, I think it is indicative of the fact that this is not a simple issue. There is a lot to be considered. Rosemary's comment, I've had a mixture of work locations over many years, depending on what I am working on dictates as to where I work. I sit on national and international committees. I consult at the national international level My preference is to work from an office simply because it allows me to shut off the end of the day. Rosemary, you are so right. Having been a business owner for the second time, one of the challenges that we face, or the downside from being a so-called at-home worker, is it's hard to close the door at the end of the day and shut it off. I will go a step further. The option, by the way, is if this goes widespread and the companies, organizations say, well, we're not going to accept a pure work from home model. In fact, some of them may say, no, you've got to be in the office. And that is actually happening, that a lot of these companies, organizations are saying, okay, at a certain point in this process, when they feel COVID is under control, whatever the different determinations is, everybody's coming back to the office and work primarily from the office. So if companies on a large scale do that and people on a large scale say no, it's either I work from home or I will quit and do my own job, or do my own business, or do something for, work for a company that allows me to work from home. Well, and this is something that I share with people when they start talking about starting their own business. Having your own business is very appealing in a lot of ways, being your own boss, quote unquote, and also being in charge of your own schedule and all of those pieces, and making all the money. Those are all great concepts, but for anyone that's been there and had to be in that position of being your own boss and being the primary earner and so on, faces a lot of implications. One of them is what Rosemary talks about, being able to shut it off. And I will tell you, as a business owner that had employees before, that one of the challenges, it was difficult to take vacations, because when you take vacations and you are a business owner, and you're especially a small business owner where you don't have a lot of support staff, you're it, and you try to go on vacation, it's hard to enjoy it, because if you're not there, money's not being made. And the other implication is, what happens if something goes wrong, and so on. And so the impact of the work from home model, especially if you're a business owner or solopreneur, there are other factors, such as, can I walk away and leave it at the end of the day and not have stress all the time? And yeah, I agree, Rosemary. Most people that have considered, Rosemary commented that she hasn't used KPIs for 15 years. I get it, but it is still a very ingrained part of evaluations and performance consideration in many organizations and companies still today. It's part of the checkbox that's out there. So the implications of not handling the whole concept of work from home could be remarkably good if it's handled well and a lot of good consideration in it. It could be remarkably bad, or somewhere in the middle. I think that we do forget, or we do think, and I hope that people have come to realize this more through the way we've responded to the pandemic, that even the most extroverted person, isolation is not a healthy place, because one of the things that is very important is understanding, and I talk about this regularly, is design. And just to be very blunt, we are designed to have social interaction. We're designed to have time, and I'm not talking even virtual, I'm talking face to face and shared real time in person interactions. That is part of who we are designed, and that is a universal design. Some people need that less than others, but we all need it on some level. And so going work from home, the potential is a great deal of isolation, and that can be very unhealthy very quickly. And so we just need to think this through. And I don't know that the challenge is that there are so many different people involved in this that I don't know that we can come to a collective decision, but I certainly hope that we can start among us as wisdom seekers, that we can start the conversation and be at the forefront of approaching this whole thing as wisely as possible. We really do need to think about that. And as an employee, as an employer, one of the things that we're going to be tempted to do, because this is what we do, is, well, this is what is this to me and me only. And that's where we will start getting in trouble, is if we approach it purely from a selfish standpoint. This could get really bad really quick, because we are not considering all of this in isolation, and the decisions we make, even on an individual level, aren't in isolation either. And let's see, Sam's got a comment. Yes, the KPIs are part of the business model that I believe needs to be modified to meet the new realities. I've been trying to work as a virtual assistant on contract. It's not easy to convince folks of the benefit. And I am still trying to overcome certain perceptions about those types of modes of doing business. Yeah, we all struggle with that. I know that one of my recent contracts, part of the reason that I've stopped doing it is that the management of the organization was very much KPI and old school, in that in order to be productive, everybody had to be in the office and so on. And for me, and one of the things that I've learned about me is at this stage in life, that's too restrictive, because since I do not have children at home anymore, empty nest, and I'm enjoying that. But that means that when I do work, it may be at different hours of the day. Sometimes I will get my brain turning, and my most productive time might not start till 9 or 10 o'clock at night, when other things are quiet and I can really focus in on something. And the problem is that a lot of companies that are dependent on an old management model don't have room for that. You know, it's be in the office from 8:30 to 5 every day, and you know, you have certain allotted time for lunch and just different things like that. And for some people, from just a temperament type, that is not a workable model. So again, more implications of this this whole concept, and the idea that Sam has raised about virtual assistants. You know, it's with the virtual world we live in, a lot of that can be done remotely, and that the implications of going that route makes a huge difference. Rosemary says, I've had a virtual assistant for a while, a few years back, just to keep my diary in some type of order. He was great to have around. I was very sorry that the company he worked for went broke, so I lost him, and he lost his job. I learned to manage my own diaries over multiple time zones, and found that the people I work with prefer to have a 3-minute conversation rather than schedule a 30-minute meeting. Another implication from the whole concept of working from home is how we manage communication. And it is challenging to manage communication on a bright sunny day, everything going well, and everybody in the same room or in the same building. That is a real challenge. Well, if we go virtual, working from home on a large scale, communication becomes an issue, especially back to the whole education concern, is that the types of communication become different, and the ability to effectively do written communication in a virtual model is a real challenge, because a lot of people now do not know how to be effective in writing and consider their words that they're writing. And the challenge, especially big challenge with that, is if you're in a purely verbal set of communication and you do something, say something that was not a good idea, negative, whatever, at some point it goes away and you have the chance to overcome it. But in the current virtual world, the more we rely on it, the more not only the good things we do, but any mistakes we make don't go away. They are ever around and potentially ever present. And that's another part of the implications of going virtual and working from home or remotely. And yes, Sam, one of the challenges with it is, how do we set limits for ourselves, not only personally closing the door for the day, so to speak, but how do we set limits on other people and say, look, just because I am not working in an office and I'm not punching a clock from 8:30 to 5 every day, doesn't mean you can't expect that I'm going to be available all the time. I know that I find it challenging. Some of the elements of what I do are across time zones, and when you're doing virtual digital communication, your day, just here in the US, an 8-hour day goes to, at a minimum, more like 11 or 12 hours just to cover time zones. And then if you're international, I know for Rosemary right now, I believe it's somewhere around 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So if I'm doing business with Rosemary in Australia, my timing becomes a challenge. So more implications of looking at a work from home model. And so I really hope that we're going to approach this very thoughtfully and really look at the implications. And as an employee, not just say, well, this makes me feel good and it saves me money and what I want, so don't care what anyone else says. I don't care what the company says. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And then from an employer side, I hope that as managers, hopefully they are becoming leaders, begin to consider the implication of this. They don't say, well, look, I'm giving you a job, and if you don't want to do it my way, then it's the highway. And so if we dig our heels in and only look at it from our personal, individual comment, our concept is it's all about me, then we've got a real problem. And just for the record, anytime we go it's all about me in what we do, we are becoming very quickly unwise. This is, after all, a wisdom seeker podcast. And so when we do that, we are automatically setting ourselves up to be unwise. And Rosemary has a comment. Really love it when someone in America decides to call me just because they thought of something that we need to discuss. it may well be 3 p.m. for them, but it could be 5 a.m. Yeah, I have to confess, Rosemary, that I've had to really work through and think through the whole concept of time zones, to a point that now on my phone I have added multiple time zones as I begin to make decisions, to really consider if my timing is right in whatever it is. Because the beauty of being on LinkedIn and having some great connections from all over the world is that the interaction has to be considered from a timing standpoint. And something else that comes to mind with all of this and work from home, one of the values of being in an office with people is that with little effort, hopefully in an office, you are physically close to your team that you're working with. So if you have a question that you just need a quick response to, it's a matter of getting out of your chair, walking to another room, another cubicle, and asking a question and going back to where you were. Challenge with social media, virtual, and all that is delay in communication, and it becomes a quite a factor, especially if we are not if our time is a challenge for us. Because if I'm working, say, for example, with Rosemary, and something comes up at, I don't know, 12 or 1 o'clock my time, it is not going to be likely that Rosemary would be able to, or reasonably expected to, respond quickly to communication, because it's going to be the middle of the morning, early morning, 1, 2, 3 in the morning for her. And so again, learning to communicate, learning to plan to work in that environment is another challenge that we have to consider. And the nice thing is, with the work from home model, it gives us more flexibility to be able to do those communications and to work with people in other parts of the world that would be very difficult in an 8 to 5 office job, or an 8 to 5 retail, or whatever. So lots of implications that we really need to think through in regards to this whole decision about working from home. And I hope that as any of us consider how we're going to respond, that we do so very thoughtfully, and that we do so without being selfish. And because, again, I would suggest that when we get selfish, we get unwise by its very nature. And it is not good for any of us, for all of us, to get selfish and make decisions and try to function in that fashion. Let's see, Zaid makes comments that he had issue of answering 24/7, even with someone who was next to me physically. He thought if it's about work, then time didn't mean much. Yeah, that's a whole nother challenge, and it's real different when our behaviors change. By the way, another piece of this to consider is our behaviors change when we are interacting virtually versus face to face. One of the recent things that I've shared with on LinkedIn that caught a lot of people's attention, that really had strong opinions, was related to etiquette. And I think part of the reason that we see people doing things that are unprofessional or bad manners on social media is because we can hide behind the virtual screen. And we would think that that would only be a factor in social media, but it's not. people's behavior will be different if we are primarily functioning virtually we've already talked about timing standpoint, but from a psychological standpoint, potential that it will create additional conflict working primarily virtually, because people would more likely say or do things in a virtual environment than they would if they were face to face with others. And I've even been able to demonstrate that concept to my satisfaction, in that on social media, if someone wants to get into a big debate in regards to especially a controversial topic, there's a point where I will not debate someone on social media platforms or LinkedIn because it's not the proper environment at a certain point. And I always will offer, hey, we can have the discussion. I'm more than happy to even debate and really challenge each other's ideas. That's nothing wrong with that. Can be very helpful. The difference is that I won't do it on a social media platform, because their behavior is different than if you're sitting face to face or live. Even virtual makes a difference. And so it's really another factor. If we go from mostly site-based or office-based working to a lot of people working virtually, I think the implications from a behavior standpoint are rather remarkable as well. I tell you, Rosemary, it's Australia is a challenge for me, because you guys are like the U.S. You've got multiple time zones within Australia. And so when I start looking at trying to, one of the factors for me is when I post or even doing this live show, one of the questions is, how can I reach out to multiple time zones, especially Australia, because I have a lot of great friends in Australia, but to time things to be able to make it right for my friends in Australia is a challenge. So it's all part of the implications of working virtually. Sam has a comment. Definitely a learning curve for some people when it comes to etiquette. Same thing was true when email came into the fold as a prevalent communication tool. Oh yeah, definitely. I know the first time that or not first time, but early on in a email environment, I was tempted, because I'm not an expert typist, to set everything all caps and type away, because it saves some efficiencies for me. And then the first time I did that in an email, I had someone gracious enough to comment back and ask me why I was yelling at them, and I did not know what they were talking about. And a lot of people are in that boat. In fact, one of the challenges that I see is that we generational challenges in terms of technology. And traditionally, baby boomers, the generation I'm from, most of the people in our generation are still at a point where they're doing good just to manipulate email and maybe some basic digital function. Whereas if we are required to get into virtual meetings and webinars and all of that, we've got a lot of people that are going to struggle just functioning in that environment. Again, another consideration for this whole question of work from home. So I appreciate everyone being here today. I really enjoy the conversation. I hope that you'll take a look at the article and provide feedback and comments. That's always helpful. And I know that Tisha and I have talked about a follow-on article to go more in depth on some of the areas. And so if that's turns out to be a need, something that we can look at doing to expand the conversation in written form and maybe help affect some thoughts. Welcome, Daniel. Glad to have you from Kenya, excuse me. We're about to sign off. So welcome. I hope you'll join us next week. And we will continue Wisdom Seeker Live each week at Mondays at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, which is about, I believe, 10 o'clock p.m. in Australia. And just so lots of different time zones. One of the thing, and I would be interested in getting some feedback from you all, is I'm toying with the idea of doing a weekly live just on education, and it would be separate from the one on Monday morning. And if you think there is merit to that, please let me know. Something that I'm considering doing, and might even consider different timing, be an evening live or something. So anyway, share feedback. Thank you, everyone. God bless you. I pray that you will indeed seek wisdom in all you do, so that you can make the best choices and also be an example to those around you. So take care, and we will see you again next Monday at 8 a.m. Eastern, and appreciate all your inputs. Thank you.